So imagine you give birth to this beautiful child and you fall in love instantly. All parents have this experience. And then you're told all of these stories about
Ah,
the future of your child. And often in what I've heard and even in my own experience, often what happens is you go into those preliminary appointments where the medical practitioners or even physiotherapists, even later on, where they start to look at your child or they start to look at the background information about what happened or what's going on. And then they start to share with you possible trajectories for your child, which are usually not so positive. So right from the start, we're already starting to feel discouraged. We're already beginning to feel like that hope is taken away from us. And the unfortunate thing is oftentimes they don't even go to look at our child. So they don't see all the beautiful things that we see as parents. We see our beautiful son or daughter who has this beautiful energy and is just so wonderful, and we're so in love with them. And we just feel so deflated because the whole conversation is so negative from the very start. So I think when we talk about doom and gloom, it's almost like from the beginning, we're set on this path where we're robbed of hope from the very start. There's no conversation about
oh,
being able to shift your mindset or
yeah,
open up new things, or that there are possibilities for children and we
right.
simply have to find things that are going to be in alignment. So this is exactly when I spoke of when we have those appointments with the physiotherapists and the OTs and the speech. All these people, they have a good heart and they're well intentioned. That's why they chose this work to support these beautiful children. But oftentimes we're looking for those limitations to be able to fix them. And so that's kind of how it starts. It starts with this idea that we're supposed to simply look for what's wrong. And so the parents start to train themselves this way. They go home and they start looking for, is my child using their right hand? And that becomes the entire focus. So imagine you're going from a space of being robbed of hope to then focusing your attention on all that is not present, all the limitations. So you
Yeah.
can just imagine how you're already setting yourself up to walk down a path of suffering, not only for yourself, but for your child, right? Imagine a child growing up in an environment where all we talk about and all we notice and all we're paying attention to is what's wrong. That correlation between the parents' healing and the parents' understanding of themselves and the impact it's going to have on the whole family. And I think it's really important to mention this. And that's why in the solution, we'll talk about that because it's such a key piece. And in those early stages, the parents are really unseen. They're not really taken care of in the ways that would be most in alignment with them finding joy and being able to become more resilient on this path. And I think there are some programs that exist out there, so I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but really having this idea that you want to empower the parent, you want to shift their mindset, you want to open them up to this new way of seeing life, you want to give them hope. I know a lot of medical practitioners and therapists and everybody will be very careful about the word hope, but it's not this idea of telling them what's going to occur. It's this idea of opening them up to a life that can still be wonderful and magical. I mean, I say magical, but I say it because I've experienced so many beautiful things that I would have never experienced if I hadn't been on this path with Gabby, right? My daughter, Gabby. So my daughter has Rett syndrome, and so I've been down this path, so I understand it firsthand, but I also understand those early stages and the pain that we can go through and how it's very difficult to move through that pain when you don't understand what you're experiencing. And I think this is where that lack of support to help the parent understand that their suffering is not actually 100% what's happening with the child, that the experience with the child actually brings up a lot of old stuff that was already there. It's simply bringing it to the surface. When we experience something very traumatic or something that is very painful, sometimes it can bring up so many other things that are totally unrelated. Parents begin to drown in that pain and they start to suppress feelings, which is something that I did as well. And I feel that if parents were supported from the very start, not only would it be best in terms of creating that positive environment for the child. But it would also support those parents through understanding what they're feeling so that they become better supports for the children. They have a better sense
Got
of
it.
how to create that environment for them to thrive. The positive influence really comes from the parent, but for a parent to be able to positively influence their neurodiverse child or their child that has high medical needs, they need to start with themselves because it's all about what we're modeling as
Yeah.
parents. How are we moving through chaos? How are we moving through difficult times? How are we navigating through our own feelings? How much self-compassion do we have for ourselves? How much do we love ourselves? Do we love ourselves unconditionally? How much time are we allocating to caring for ourselves so that we can find peace within? All of those things, we're modeling those things. So not only are we modeling that for a neurodiverse child, but we're also modeling it for the sibling. We have to remember that the siblings that are in the household, they see everything that's occurring. They also feel. They feel everything that's going on and without really understanding it. So it's important that when a parent actually starts to dig deeper, to understand what they're feeling, to get a better sense of what's happening inside of them, so they have the power then to shift. So they have the power then to move from a space of anxiety into a more peaceful space, understanding where it's coming from and why it's being triggered. These are all beautiful things to teach to both of their children, or how many ever children they have. That includes the sibling. So when you start to really shift within yourself, you become that positive influence. When you shift your mindset and you start looking at life from a lens that is open and positive, where possibilities lie, then your children start to mirror that. When we can truly see our child through that clear lens, they feel that we're mirroring back to them how wonderful they are, rather than mirroring back to them all the limitations that they have and how much we want to fix them. And we don't do this on purpose. I want parents to be very self-compassionate here because it's really not their fault. We're brought down this path. So it's very difficult to start to shift. The first thing that's going to happen is parents are going to start to feel guilty. And that's not fair. Because you can't know what you don't know until you know, and then you start to create change. And I always remind parents of this, always. And I think this is where there are some aspects to the system that are lacking because it's educating the parent about the importance of them taking that time to do the inner work because it has a direct influence on the children in the household. And so when we can tell a parent caring for yourself and loving yourself enough to go do those things that are going to help you find your center, go do those things that are going to help you find peace, figure out how to regulate your own nervous system, take that time for yourself. Because some of us have a tendency to move into that victim role of, oh, I don't have time, or how can I even think of that? I have so much to do for my child, and what about my child? And so we move into this space of selflessness because selflessness in society is celebrated. But yet selflessness is not the example we want to set for our children. And it's not going to help our child really step into that potential. It really isn't, because part of us becoming empowered to guide our child towards that innate potential, part of that is us learning how to do that ourselves.
So
How do
true.
we step into our own potential? This is why it's so correlated
And
and how it really empowers us to support the whole family, including the siblings. Some of the things that we first have to do is really dismantle our outdated perceptions of what it means to be neurodiverse or to have a disability. Because we have this negative idea of what that means. And when we can start to shift our mindset as parents, as professionals, everyone that's in that child's world, when we can start to shift our perceptions and our mindset around it, we can really start to see the possibilities rather than the limitations. And when we start seeing possibilities, we're really seeing the child. We're really connecting with the child. And so to nurture a child's sense of self and their beliefs about themselves, we also have to be able to connect with them on a level that is deep enough, that is beyond the surface, so that we can really mirror that back to them, so that when they're with us, they feel like the beautiful human being that we see. We want them to feel that. So that's why it's important for us to do our inner work, because if we're with a child and we're saying all the right things, but we're not really thinking them and we're not really feeling them, that child, and especially children that are neurodiverse, they will feel it,
Because
they will know, and they will know when you're not authentic. That is one of their beautiful gifts, is they will call you out. They will call you out. But when you are authentic and when you are in that space where you know who you are and you're living from your heart space, that connection with those kids will happen immediately because they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued and celebrated exactly as they are. And that's what they need. But we need to get past our own limited view of them first. There's nothing wrong with these kids. They're just different. And if we can start to open up to see what those differences are and how those differences can be gifts in truth. It's this idea that if we're to see possibilities within a child, we have to see possibilities within ourselves. We really need to begin to expand and to move beyond what we can see physically. When I talk about dismantling outdated perceptions and belief systems and really moving past that conditioning, is to open up to this new way of
yeah,
thinking. Because even for ourselves, we're not
yeah,
functioning at our highest potential unless we really start to dig deeper, because it's so much beyond what we can do. So without being able to go into that within ourselves, you can't see it in another person. You simply can't see it. And the children will know the people who are doing that work and those that are not doing that work. It's instant. It's instant. The connection is instant. Usually the focus is on the grief and on how you're dealing with the news and all of this. And I feel like, sure, we need to go there. It's important to go there and grieve what we thought would be, because that's part of releasing something to open up to something new, to allow something new to come in. The issue with the current system is that they linger there. There's never really this step into this new space. And I think part of it is because, and it's not any of their fault, but many of these people that are supporting these families, they don't know what it feels like to step into this space of embracing the journey and really understanding how much of an opportunity it is to expand. It's very difficult for them to know. How could they know? And so I feel it's important for even professionals out there to be educated about what is possible for these families. And so to empower these professionals to understand how to connect with them. So even to understand when they're sharing a message with a parent, where is that parent? How is that parent going to receive that message? How are they going to perceive it in this stage? This is all important. The work with the parents is really this beautiful, safe space. These parents have to be able to talk about what they're going through. You know, a lot of them feel shame for some of the feelings that they have, but it's important to move through those feelings. They feel sad that their child is in a certain way or has a certain diagnosis, and then they feel shame for feeling those things, or they feel guilty a lot of the time. It's important to talk about that and to really dig deeper and to understand where is it coming from, and having that self-compassion and understand that it's so understandable for us to experience these feelings because of the conditioning we've had, because of the beliefs that have been imposed on us. All this to say, there's so much that can be done with these parents so that they really start to love themselves more and give themselves a big hug, because this is hard. It's hard, but at the same time, it's a beautiful opportunity to start really opening up. I just want to remind parents that there's hope. That's my message every time, because sometimes we can be robbed of hope on this path. And hope is really important, not only for ourselves, but also for our kids, because there's so much more out there for them. There's so much more to life. And when we begin to discover what that is, what that so much more is, we begin to understand that living in their shoes, there's so much beauty in it. So it doesn't look so doom and gloom as it appeared to be in those early stages.